Good day, everybody, and thanks to GS1 and Oz Industry for this opportunity to meet you all. Today, I'll talk through three broad areas which are related to the West Australian cold chain pilot project. But I'd like to lead you in from the journey which has really driven our involvement in this. So I'll go through three stages: the general situation for export of perishable F&B ex-WA, the importance of international trade by air freight and sea freight to WA, and some of the future challenges and the drivers for this new initiative, including the cold chain optimisation pilot project. The general situation: pre-COVID-19, Perth exporters of perishable F&B were reliant upon abundant and cheap belly cargo space on passenger jets. We don't get serviced by freighters, and on average there was 216 weekly flights a week, giving about 4,000 tonnes per week. Just-in-time delivery by exporters to freight forwarders was typical. And when COVID-19 struck and the passengers stopped coming, we were in a bit of a mess. The global logistics system was broken. The only option then was chartering, and the full cost on charters rose to anywhere between 7 and 12 times pre-COVID rates. So the Department of Primary Industries, we intervened with a pilot project to keep perishables, including pork and horticultural products, going up into the Singapore market. We did 10 flights, shifted about 466 tonnes for those 10 flights, and then the International Freight Assistance Mechanism that came in, and that's been an absolute lifeline for our exporters. However, IFAM, after a series of extensions, is due to end now next June of 2022, and we're now looking to what next. So all the predictions are that air freight rates will not return to pre-COVID levels, and without IFAM rebates, the current costs ex-Perth would be about 5 times pre-COVID, which is significantly higher than experienced on the East Coast. Sea freight rates, although we're looking currently at several 100% increases on pre-COVID rates, the forecasts are that that'll probably settle at about plus 30% in 2 to 3 years from now. So here we see some of the collateral damage of aircraft parked near Alice Springs due to COVID. Current flights out of Perth are at around 20% of pre-COVID. So yeah, it's a massive reduction in the export capacity that we've got for perishables. And of course, then we've also got what can go wrong with major port disruptions as well. So just a couple of examples here which upset the total freight, the total global sea freight system for many weeks and if not months. We've had COVID issues in China, which has caused massive port congestions around Yantian, and we've got the well-publicised Suez Canal Evergreen cargo ship, which got stuck across the Suez a few months back. So we've seen a few twists and turns in this whole process. Earlier this year, despite the heightened costs, we were seeing some switching from air to sea freight where possible. But now, because of the severe sea freight disruptions, there's been a bit of a swing back to air freight in some circumstances. So we've got a number of big questions, I think, facing us around global freight disruption. When will it normalise, and what will be the frequency, networks, costs, and are there intermodal options which are cheaper? Another question would be, can exporters that were previously viable at pre-COVID air freight rates remain viable in the new norm, or do they need to adjust business models, including cold chain practices, to survive and thrive? We need to assess how markets have changed. In fact, we need to understand how WA's competitive position has changed. We need to build further supply chain resilience, and there's a massive role here for cold chain optimization capacity building through this process. So that's just a general overview of our agricultural sector, as you can see. But we're a very export dependent state. In summary, 80% of what we produce is exported, and 80% of that is in a primary form. And although COVID has been very disruptive. We've been saved to a large extent by a bumper grain crop. So the export value is stuck at around $8 billion over the last couple of years. So we then look at the air freight and the perishables, and that's, I guess, the prime interest here is that we've got export value of about 0.8 of a billion dollars by air freight every year, which is about 10% of our total exports. 80% of that is taken up by 5 products: lobster, sheep meat, pig meat, strawberries, and bovine meat. Then we've got a very long tail, which is the challenging bit. In the long tail, which is about 20% of the total air freighted exports, we've got about 180 different products in there. And that gives us a requirement for, well, basically, collaboration is vital to aggregate and build viable scale consignments for small batch exporters. And within this mix, we've got many SMEs that are at different stages of maturity. So if we look at, how we've been adjusting to the industry's been adjusting to the COVID supply chain challenges. Sea freight, largely because of grains, is up by about 2%. Air freight down by 24%. So we've lost about 145 million off the value of exports from F&B perishables using air freight. And there has been some shift towards sea freight. You can see here that the top line figures are, as I mentioned, are pretty standard, but we've seen some shift down from 8% last year using air freight down to 6% this year. So the sea freight issue is becoming an issue for us, and we continue to monitor that situation. So globally competitive supply chains are essential for sustainable business growth. Now, one of the key advantages that we have for our exports into Asia from Perth is it's the proximity to market and what our proximity gives us in terms of shelf life. So best practice cold chain management using competitive transport solutions is essential for growth of our businesses here. We must have supply chains which meet technical and financial requirements. Customer perceptions about freshness, etc., are very important. Food safety is a must. Quality requirements are a must, and all of these issues must be subject to continual improvement processes. So for exporters of perishable F&B and live seafood, cold chain optimization using a hazard-based system, a measurable and verifiable practice is essential, and end-to-end cold chain compliance is a must. So DPIRD is supporting WA industry to undertake improvements in supply chain practices, including cold chains. Many of these issues here have been covered in great deal by the previous presenters who are specialists in the field. But it's really important for our F&B exporters to engage expertise to assist them on this really important journey. I consider it essential to walk the cold chain, or at least to understand it and then to map it, develop a quality management system, ensure cold chain management protocols are developed and used, identify the critical parameters and critical control points, appropriate technology, identify appropriate and adopt, and that's already been covered, but things like intelligent packaging, data loggers, tracking systems, etc., are going to be essential in the future. Due to ensure that verification and validation takes place at all steps, and it's really important that it's identified who are the custodians looking after your product. At the end of the day, it's the F&B brand or the retailer brand which is at stake here. It's not the shipping companies or the local transport companies which will cop the flack if a customer is not satisfied with the product that they're getting. And of course, last mile distribution and consumer acceptance in some of the areas that we export to is still a challenge. I'd just like to say another one more thing, in that one of the things that is a priority for us at the moment is to embark on a process as we try and map supply chains from both a qualitative and a quantitative point of view, is to bring in the carbon element into that as becoming an increasing essential corporate social responsibility. Next, please, Brett. So we've been trying a few different things. One of these is the initiative that we supported, a local freight forwarding company, Tigers, who have recently been bought out by American company Jazz, with a less than a container load pilot project between Perth and Singapore. That goes back to the previous slide of the long tail of the need for consolidation here. So there's just some examples there of the launch and the first shipment, which went up to Singapore. That trial included local clearance, deconsolidation, and last mile distribution. During the trial, some market factors changed, and namely the IFAM got extended. Shipping rates also increased rapidly. Sea freight reliability decreased rapidly, and the initial advantage was eroded. But we've had many lessons learned from the program, and good to go when the new normal kicks in. I think one of the key lessons that was learned was that the upstream suppliers need to do their bit to make sure that their consignments are delivered on time and at the said temperature. So that brings me to the cold chain optimization pilot project. That we're really happy to be involved with Oz Industry and the Entrepreneurs Program, but all the different project partners that are on the right. And the objectives of this pilot are to identify and address some of the logistical challenges faced by WA F&B industry. That's both in the domestic and the export markets, and also to engage with third-party logistics. Many of our SMEs obviously are completely reliant on 3PLs. We also look to generate feedback from importers and demonstrate how an end-to-end cold chain management system can reduce food loss and wastage, improve food quality and shelf life, maintain export competitiveness post-COVID-19, and also give us the opportunity to activate options to enable lower cost chilled sea freight. And of course, we always need to enhance the product and brand reputation and increase profits. So we're really trying to push what are the commercial drivers of cold chain optimization and what are the benefits to participants. So I'll hand to you now, Brett, to take it forward. Thank you everybody for listening.